Hey, I'm Dr. Mulhauser, and welcome to my part of pursuing compositional equity and making labor visible in hybrid composing processes. Sorry I couldn't make it synchronously for those who want to synchronous, but then again, I'm not sorry for those of you who might prefer me asynchronously. I guess as far as my agency is concerned, I'm happy to be asynchronously present on time. It's really the kairotic thing to do, so that maybe one day we can synchronous and watch this presentation asynchronously and chat about it face-to-face or online. Or you just email me at any Cronus. At any rate, I'm Dr. Paul Mulhauser, and I like thinking about equity as a concept and how it's just got to be articulated, or else inequity, and in some senses, equality, becomes a habit. You'll get a little bit more about what I mean later in the presentation. At any rate, it's become really important to me, especially as I've started to learn about gender equity with my kids. Guess what pre-K taught my son to say to his sister? You can't be, insert the concept there. Or you can't play, insert another concept there. You're a girl. Most recently it was, you can't play Ninja Turtles. If you contact me, call me Paul for casualness, Mulhauser for that 70s show vibe and high school fun, or Doctor for formality. Just keep away from Dr. Paul or anything like that. I'm not a Dr. Phil fan, and that formal mixed with informal kind of creeps me out. Though I don't think it should, and that kind of makes this presentation a little ironic. I am not sure what I meant by pursue. It's got some negative connotations, like equity is going to be caught and shot down or something. Maverick flew his F-16 in hot pursuit of equity, firing short-range missiles in equity's direction, along with a heavy slew of artillery fire. Whoa, that got violent. Can you guess what I cringe watched recently? And I guess it could be equity in the sense of like being impartial about what weapons are being used, if we personify weapons a little and make sure they are being treated fairly and have opportunity. Missiles and artillery, look, you're both being used here and are given a chance to strike equity down. But no, here I am giving into American weaponization language. Forgive me. If Maverick strikes down equity, though, does that mean they'll make another Top Gun? Could they call it Tops Guns instead? I don't think Maverick knows what equity is as a concept. I think he enjoys taking taxpayer money and destroying the things he uses it for. And, well, you know, one man against the world who's always right. Okay, that was the only Top Gun reference in this presentation. Let's hop on the highway to the danger zone. There are a lot of ways to think about equity, and it's a really useful lens to apply in rhetoric and composition. I mean, when you think in terms of audience and means of persuasion and or identifying person A with B, whatever, popular rhetor and identifying person A with B, or whatever popular rhetoric you want to use and their definition of rhetoric, practicing equity is like a high five for connecting with audience members. Like, did I go over something too quickly? Pause the video, rewind, turn on the closed captioning. It's kind of cool that you got those options synchronously and even asynchronously now. Fundamentally, down to the fundamentals, I practice techno-feminism, not techno-masculinity, or techno-maverickicity. Here's what I mean. Techno-feminism, unlike techno-masculinity, is an all people are created equitable position, one that acknowledges the layers of culture, describing a process for getting A to equal B. As an equation, techno-feminism assumes A plus or minus X equals B plus or minus Y, at least in some kind of Burkean reference to identification. In other words, it's a position that begins from the acknowledged difference standpoint and tries to make things as accessible to as many as you can. No one size fits all here. A techno-masculinist position, on the other hand, is a more one size fits all approach to the world. It's on you, the individual, the maverick, to figure it out how to make things fit. Like all people are created equal. It's that take on the world that really generalizes categories rather than customizing. In terms of like a technology, consider curb cuts or the sidewalk ramps we have today. Like prior to the 1960s, most sidewalks had drop-offs. No consideration for people with disabilities or people with kids and strollers or just people pushing stuff. Very techno-masculinist. Curb cuts considered the sizes of an audience. You could even consider Bumble a more techno-feminist dating tech and how it considers women's differentiated position in the dating world, aggressive masculinity, sexual harassment, rape culture, giving women the power to make the first connection after a swipe right. So from those beginnings, you can see how equity can be applied. Another way to think about it would be with Twitter and the changes it made identifying misinformation, changes that came too late. So like way prior to the insurrection, Twitter should have been doing more to identify Trump's tweets that violated policy and were spreading misinformation, inciting violence. It would be, I think, pretty easy to mark them and stop the spread, stop those RTs and whatnot. So it's important to record what this public figure is saying because there's a lot of power there and a lot of people should know. But if you're not going to ban Trump because of that, because of some kind of world leader exception, then there needed to be something that better showed and controlled the spread of that information, some sort of equity. And with regards to audience and communication design, one can consider rhetorical equity and rhetorical equality, where rhetorical equity considers way more than the on and offs of access and distribution. Readability. It considers audience members' varied knowledges and expertises. For instance, maybe I just don't know enough about the discourse of in a discipline to get it, or even a specialization, in Rhet Comp. Give me some other way of knowing that helps me get it better. Maybe a scholar has an interview for a more general public I can watch before taking a deep dive. And preferences. Considers the audience member's desires or kairotic needs for experiencing a text at particular times and places. Maybe I just have time for a podcast or an infographic rather than a long academic article. But the big deal I want to discuss today is compositional equity. Like acknowledging the big differences between traditional scholarship and born digital scholarship. This is a form of equity that has become near and dear to my heart, especially after I've gotten busier with my kids. It kind of feels like sometimes that I'm being punished for having kids and doing digi work. Or is that a privilege? It takes a lot of time. Time that I can't negotiate as well anymore, but I hope that landed. And money, right? It's become paying for that Getty pick that would fit perfectly, buying that software that I need, paying for my own website. I'm so glad I asked my chair in my school does some of those things now. And again, there's more of a cascade of what can happen. I don't want to say consequences because it's more than that. It's like harder to prep for classes, focus on committee work, and even stay current, with the technology and the changes. Like I could have just asked ChatGPT to write some of this or Bard, but I didn't. But I could have, but I didn't. But it was tempting. Here's some things about publishing in Rhet Comp, and these are just some categories we thought were important to consider. So you can publish alphabetic text without much choice in design, interface, and interaction, or you can publish web texts with a lot of choices in design, interface, and interaction, and also including that alphabetic text. I get the feeling that they're often looked at as equal. They ain't equal. I don't know. Maybe this doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I've been web texting for like over a decade and was part of the early generation of digital Rhet scholars. But it seems like we are kind of stuck in a way of thinking about it. All those warm, fuzzy feelings about making, doing, trying web texts and rhetorical designs connotes cutting-edge scholarship, pushing the envelope, and disrupts what scholarship is in terms of interface interaction. But seriously, the idea that digital scholarship has made it, there's some kind of techno afterglow to indulge in, is kind of a myth. Digital scholarship remains stigmatized as easy, like easy to create. It's less rigorously peer-reviewed, and well, it's fun, at least when compared to traditional scholarship. The fun might be accurate, so there's this inequity out there. There are some important reasons for thinking differently about traditional scholarship and digital scholarship. Consider our definitions trying to establish that difference. Traditional scholarship. It's scholarship that primarily uses the written channel of communication, alphabetic text either in physical print or as a digital artifact, in the presentation of a product, a research article. It's prescriptively formatted by the publisher's house rules. We understand that not all digital scholarship is the same. I mean, some seems more magazine-like, more article-like, which is totally fine. It has a tremendous workload. These types are really trying to, a lot of times, engage with wider audiences, keep audiences interested in a piece with more modal agency. Plus, I mean, designing a web text is usually more accessible and easier to navigate than traditional scholarship with the menus and all. But anyway, the first form is linguistic-centric scholarship, which uses a variety of communication channels beyond just alphabetic text to present arguments. Authors have agency in design and are involved in the creation of new, not exclusively written content. There are also these types of digital scholarship, where arguments are presented in a less traditional manner. Interfaces are designed as experiences to further the argument and engage audiences with the text. Non-linguistic centric scholarship, such as an argument made using just images, in which other modes of communication take precedence over the written, if they're included at all. Authors have agency in design and are involved in creation of new, not exclusively written content. I've made a bunch of all the types of scholarship, and holy shit, the non-linguistic is the worst. Like, I am usually really happy with how things turn out, but getting a Tinder interface to actually work, having a slideshow generator work to illustrate some kind of difference or point when they were really hard to do. Getting the HTML right, having the CSS animation work, writing the content, finding the pictures, taking the pictures, making an infographic, a find replace function, using stamps to create a really kickin' Facebook flower. And then, am I even reaching an audience? Like, am I easy to find as a traditional piece published in a book or a journal with all those database connections? Probably not. I just can't. Even though I just did a few weeks ago, finished up a web text. I just can't. In other words, there is a lot of more when compared to traditional scholarship. There's more in making, including the more in paying for software, buying pics, paying for a web host, and domain name. That's all part of the making system. And I'm sure that you know more, that we just add to this list. There's more in finding, more in searching, more in researching, more in citing. And I'm just thinking about, making sure you're citing your typefaces, making sure that you're citing where you got the images, where you got the interface or the design for some kind of interaction for your text, plus all of the research that you've done, the print research and things like that, the scholarship. More in terms of time to write, time to research, read, design, test, code, learn how to do something that you've never done before. And there's the mores of explanation. Dear committee, the reason I published one article this year is because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. So what do you do structurally speaking, like in terms of larger systemic stuff? Well, one thing you can do is define scholarship. Departments and committees should work on creating definitions of scholarship that are inclusive, which acknowledge the workload, time, and inequity in digital scholarly production. Digital opportunities. We hope that more outlets are made available for scholarship and that they'll emerge and reduce some of the challenges related to visibility and credibility. And we hope that those journals offer that sort of assistance in these digital opportunities so that born digital journals can continue or should continue to offer assistance in digital scholarly design in the editing process. In fact, it might be helpful to have digital mavens, digital editors that are consultants for helping to answer technical questions and learn how to imagine and design web text. Finally, graduate education. Graduate programs in Ret Comp focusing on focusing on digital technology should make sure to embed learning technologies in courses and assist digital scholars in understanding both the time and effort that makes up digital scholarship and the stigma associated with it. There could also be a collaboration database. Though conferences are excellent ways to network and find mentors and partners in composing texts, a collaboration database for RecComp might be a useful tool for matching technical skills and research interests. This could be a kind of academic matchmaker for RecComp scholars, where they create academic profiles showcasing skills, expertises, and projects that they're thinking about and are working on that could use some digital collaboration. All right, that was the last one. I misspoke there. And I've kind of thought about trying to do this using like BuddyPress or something. I'd love to work with someone on creating some kind of database like this if it doesn't already exist and I haven't found it, because sometimes that happens. But yeah, anyway, again, email me chronously. So what do you do individually? Well, one thing you can do is use disciplinary position statements. The C's, for instance, articulates many of the inequities inherent in digital scholarly production and provides guidelines and advice for how scholarship should be understood and valued. The statement also provides helpful case studies examining how different stakeholders view digital scholarship. Granted, these case studies were created in 2001 and appear to have not been updated, so they may only serve as a general guide now. So one thing to do would be considering or helping the C's figuring out how to update those guidelines and learn to appreciate what's going on just as the technologies change, that sort of thing. Another thing you can do is document process. So scholars can find it beneficial to fully explain their composing processes, document the hours they spend learning technologies, take screenshots of their web texts in progress. In other words, scholars need to make the labor visible for those who cannot currently see it. Documenting interactions. In addition to the impacts of citation, the metrics of which can be difficult to locate with web texts, digital scholars may find it beneficial to track the impact of their work in the form of digital metrics related to their web text, like visits to the web text, time spent on a particular part of the web text, links to the web text. Additionally, scholars may find using social media metrics useful in arguing about impact and accessibility to larger publics, likes and shares. And in addition to numbers, scholars could contextualize who is sharing, providing explanations for how shares by those considered leaders in the field have more weight than other sorts of shares. So you get, one share from like a self versus a share from me. And, you can talk more about that self one and how important that is. Making rhetorical choices. The driving force behind a lot of digital scholarship is because, it's going to fit the argument that you want to make. But we want to make sure that, as a composer, think about why you're doing something. So consider questions of audience access and context early in your processes, and let those decisions help drive whether you're going to choose to write or compose digitally. Don't shy away from the digital because it isn't valued, but also don't flock towards it because it's shiny. Embrace what you know. Feel you can know and collaborate. So we support this sort of ready-made rhetoric approach where, it's this inclusive and we think equitable practice, acknowledging the time and difficulty that goes into creating digital scholarship and the positionality of digital authors. Digital scholars, in other words, should remember to love or use the technology they know or feel they can know based on their current positionalities. So, there's been this pressure, like learn to code, learn to do really cutting edge stuff with regards to you make it yourself or something like that. That's not the only ideal, all right? There are ways to design insightful and cutting edge works with things that aren't just that code, things that you know or feel that you can know. So there's no shame in not knowing code or programming. And I think scholars should continue to be open to collaboration opportunities with scholars whose ready-made knowledge may be different or complementary to their own. Don't be afraid of plugins, don't be afraid of templates. These are all things that you can use, manipulate, and apply in different ways just to make cutting-edge arguments and push the envelope. Again, there's that sort of code stigma that as a digital scholar you need to be, doing something extra or something like that. I hope that makes sense. So there's a lot of equity to consider out there. There's considerations for us computers and writing folk. There's equity in technology. How can tech be designed, keeping equity in mind? There's equity for audience, like why may such an electorophilic press? There's equity for authors, like how does one negotiate author agency and equity practices in design and readability preferences? And there's equity in composition, like how can DigiLabor have a real afterglow? It was great to be asynchronous with you. Have a good conference, and I leave you with the song. Did you know that I love karaoke and will sing the Summer Nights duet with me, myself, and 2 microphones? Tumble out of bed and stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition, and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping, and folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living.